I have significant concerns with, which is the Federal Highway Administration's final rule to create a greenhouse gas performance measure, forcing state departments of transportation and metropolitan planning organizations to set declining targets for carbon dioxide emissions stemming from transportation on the national highway system. This policy was considered and rejected as part of negotiations of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Despite that fact, the Biden administration continues to march forward with their proposal. The full committee and this subcommittee have previously heard concerns from other stakeholders regarding this rule. Specifically, folks have raised concerns about how this rule will impact the ability of states to select their own projects and what that would mean to rural communities. As I mentioned in my opening statement, these are areas where a subway system or bike lanes just simply don't make sense, and they won't help move people or goods within or from our rural areas. So I'd like to start with Mr. Gradiman. Do you share those concerns?
Yes, great question, Chairman. Absolutely. You know, because the greenhouse gas performance measures apply a one-size-fits-all to both rural and urban communities, it just doesn't make sense for certain communities to have bike lanes, to have subways, to have heavy transit in rural Iowa, rural Arkansas, western Nebraska. These places don't need that type of service. And when you start influencing state officials on how they can spend their revenue, it leads to me, it just seems like a recipe for disaster. And reducing greenhouse gas is important, but it needs to be done in a fiscally sensible way. They'll end up spending money on projects that are not necessary and don't provide any economic benefit. And no, I don't think it benefits rural America at all.
Thank you. Mr. Vanderwall, you addressed this in your written testimony. You want to expand on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we are very concerned about that process because it does complicate the process. For a small state like South Dakota, we don't have the resources in a lot of cases, and frankly, not the need for some of these transportation methods. Like you mentioned, subways. We don't have any subways in South Dakota. Electric vehicles is another one that's a real challenge for us because it can be 25 degrees below zero in the wintertime. And as we saw with the Chicago during the cold snap this winter, they don't work well in that circumstance. So we believe it's not fair to states that have fewer resources, and we need flexibility among the states. Like the previous speaker said, one size doesn't fit all.
Got it. Mr. Gradiman, in your testimony, you discussed the importance of having one federal standard for companies engaged in interstate commerce as it relates to meal and rest break provisions. Can you elaborate on that and why there's currently a patchwork of state provisions and how that's problematic?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, one aspect of our company's mission is maintaining operational simplicity. And not only would this create operational inefficiencies for our company, it creates operational inefficiencies for every single company that operates in interstate commerce. How would the DOT hours of service rules apply? Which state regulations would supersede? You know, we have motor coaches that depart Sioux Falls, South Dakota, pick up a group in northwest Iowa, the driver from South Dakota, switch drivers in Illinois or Missouri by St. Louis, switch to another driver. Which sets of rules would apply? We're going to drive through 6 states. We're going to use drivers from multiple states. We have an origin, we have a destination. Which state rules will apply? You know, cross-country travel will be completely disrupted. How will electronic logging devices accommodate the different state changes? Right now, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, they work. We have a uniform safety scheme that works great for the United States travel, and having a patchwork of different state provisions would just be an utter failure in progress of moving goods, services, and people across the United States.
Thank you. The Clean Freight Coalition just this week announced the results of a study which found $1 trillion in investments could be required to meet goals set by states and federal government to reduce emissions from and electrify the trucking sector. Mr. Vanderwall, our ag sector, like many others, relies on trucking to deliver goods to market. American families are dependent on those products. I have some concerns about forcing a massive shift to EVs, and particularly as it applies to trucks. A trucker hauling cattle across Arkansas doesn't have the hours to spend waiting for their truck to charge. Your thoughts on that in just a few seconds?
Yes, we would be concerned about that. We feel that if the administration wants to reduce the carbon footprint, we certainly have something to contribute through biofuels and renewable fuels that we can contribute. You're correct. We can't have livestock trucks sitting along the side of the road, especially in hot conditions. So it's very, very much a concern for us.
Thank you, appreciate that.